Hey, what's going on, everybody? I know it's been a while since I've uploaded a video. I've been kind of busy in my life, so I figured I'd throw one up. Today, I kind of wanted to show everybody how to properly bake a normal map in 3ds Max. Now, I know a lot of people probably use different programs like XNormal or even Substance Painter to bake their maps, but for those who are curious how to do it in 3ds Max, I'm going to show you today. So, as you can see, we have two similar soccer ball looking objects here. Now, most of you can probably figure out which is which, but for now, you're basically looking at two models that look nearly exactly the same. Um, but obviously, as that's popping up, you see which one is which. So I named them up here. Um, so anyway, I've already set these up so that the texture that I made with the normal map and a sort of diffuse color, I should say, because I've added a few different maps underneath the material to make it look like this. But basically, what you would be doing is baking out the detail of the high poly as a texture to then apply to a low poly. So this would be like a game asset. So right now, this and this would have to be in the same space. So I'm gonna move that. I'm gonna take these off real quick. Go over that. Now I just want to make another thing clear for those watching. When I left click, it's going to be blue, and when I right click, it's going to be red. You're going to see these effects on the video, or you should be, every time I click. So as you can see, so this way you'll know what I'm doing if for some reason I don't say exactly what I'm clicking. So anyway, here are the two. This one's already centered because I'd already done this once before, so I'm going to do it again. I may have to pause this or quicken this video in certain spots. So when I do that, you may not even notice it, but I have to do it for editing reasons. But either way, if you do notice it, I had to do it to basically save you all a lot of time. So here we go. Not sure why it's showing it that way. It's kind of weird. That just popped up. But, oh, maybe because for some reason the pivot is still on. There we go. Don't want to be doing that, folks. Alright, so as you can see, it's pretty much in there. And the reason this has to be the case is because basically what's happening is you're taking the large high poly model and you're projecting light rays from a cage. And I'm going to show you that in a second. And it basically, think of it this way. If emissions or light or whatever the heck comes off of the planet of our, the surface of our planet and goes into the atmosphere, some of it may bounce off and bounce back, okay? Other stuff may go right through it. Now think of it this way. Our planet without an atmosphere, things would just be bouncing off into space and they would not return at all. Now what this cage does essentially is acts like an atmosphere, so some things may try to pass through and then bounce back in. So with that cage, it's able to then pick up the detail of the high poly so that after it scans that into an actual texture using a computing dealing with light, or ray tracing I should say, basically it takes that texture and makes it so it's possible to use it on a low poly. Now the only thing that matters in this process that I've noticed is your low poly mesh has to be very close to the same size as the high poly. Also, you need to make sure that the geometry is very close as well. Now if you can retopologize something, great. If you don't want to do that, just if you optimize it or do some sort of optimizing, make sure that it is very close to the original shape, because otherwise it will just look distorted. Another thing you want to keep in mind is when you scan this, it's projecting onto the UV layout of the low poly model, so that has to be laid out properly. Otherwise it may not work right. That's the one that matters. The high poly UV layout does not matter because it's not reading from that. It's just reading the detail of the high poly and projecting everything onto the low. So let's do that right now. We're going to have to go to rendering, And now in these setups, you're going to go to render setup first. So right now I have the default scale line renderer. Some people use Mental Ray or other ones. I won't get into all that detail, but I will say this. I sometimes do use Mental Ray for ambient occlusion, but I can also use this technique to basically create a pretty good ambient occlusion as a diffuse map. And if I use the right background material in 3ds Max to create this, it's the same effect as if you were to burn it as a ambient occlusion Mental Ray or something similar, and I was able to do it with both. So, but with normal maps, I would stick with the default scale line renderer. That just seems to work the best. That's how I got these so high quality. Now they're 2048 by 2048. Down here I have output size. It was to custom, see, but I just went to HD TV. It's basically my screen and everything like that. Everybody probably has one. If you don't, sorry. But you can basically set that up to fit what you want, you know, and you want to make sure that under common and assign renderer you have the default scale line. So that would be, I think, up here. Yep. So you could go to Mental Ray if you wanted to, but you don't want to do it right now. You also want to make sure that the filter is Catmull ROM, and you have Hammerslay. And oh wait, actually, you know what? I think it's not that at all. I believe it's max 2.5 star, but I'm gonna, I'm gonna go with that because I think that's what I did before. I could be wrong. If that's the case, then like I said, I'll just edit this video and let you know afterwards and be like, well, I'm glad I saved you all that time because I couldn't remember which setup I did. So right now we have light tracer as well. I don't think I used this last time, so I'm going to turn it off right now. I'll just say all that will disappear. I'm pretty sure that I'm fine with that. I'm also going to, like I said, take off the texture of the other one so I can see it without the texture. You know what I mean? Kind of distractive. You want to make sure that when you apply it, or if it applies itself automatically, you do see the difference once it's applied. So that's that. Double check. Alright, we're good there. So now we're going to go into that again, rendering, and go to render to texture. I already have this open, but it's minimized, so I'll open it again. So we're going to come down here, and we're going to want to set everything up, but first what we need to do is we need to go over to the low poly. And we need to make a projection map. And so what's going to happen is it's going to create a projection around the small poly. The small poly. You want to engulf the high poly, and you want to make sure that it's as close as possible to the high poly. But you want to give it enough room to be able to breathe, meaning that when you set up the air settings and you don't have this set up right on your cage, enough space around it, it will come up and show that the rays had errors hitting the surface of the high poly because it was either too close, it was inside of it, or something wasn't right. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. We're using the other sphere, and we're gonna make this a little bigger so that it can properly record the ray tracing around the entire object. So you also want to make sure, like I said, the UV layout of the small poly is what matters. You want to make sure that's channel 1 because that's what that layout's going to be. So if you do it yourself by hand or use a third-party program, just make sure that that's checked. You want to make sure that the sub-object, which is going to be the other one, I believe, as far as I know, that's going to be checked to 1 too. I don't need a diffuse map in there, but that's what like I said, I was doing this to make the ambient occlusion, so I did the diffuse without a texture. I'm just going to delete that real quick. So anyway, you could also go down here and decide to find where you basically save it. So let me do that real quick. I gotta make sure that. Alright, so I believe that most people will use Targa, but right now I'm just going to use Bitmap because it's pretty high quality and it's going to show you in its full glory what the normal map looks like when it's baked on the desktop. So I'm just going to call this yeah, low poly normal. The reason I'll call this because that's, you know, it's where you're putting it. So we'll just do that. RGB 24-bit. So, and then you can set the size. Usually it's 256 by 256 default, but I go to 2048. And so that's render texture. I believe I already did the other stuff. So, oh yeah, that's right. You got to pick. So make sure that before you do the render to texture, you go over and pick. So I'm picking the high poly soccer ball. That's what it's going to take the projection from, the detail and everything. So again, see, now the cage has gotten bigger. I do have to adjust the cage. Oh, whoop. Actually, you know what? I already had the setup on this model. I forgot. So anyway, yeah, mine, for some reason, it was just doing that. But anyway, it has a projection on it. And I believe I'd already... You know, I'm just going to make sure again. I'm going to shade it point to point. Okay, that's the big one. That's the other one. So right now it's showing the old texture that I made. Let me see if I can go over to materials and turn this off. Okay, so where all the white is, it's like both models are almost in the exact same space, and that's what you want. So the cage is a little too close. I want to make sure that that's going to cover the whole thing here. So I'm going to do this and just kind of, I'm holding it down, but I want to make sure that I get all of it around there. So that's about good. We'll keep that there, and I'll make sure again that this is, so the small projection, I have to then go to maybe this works. Yeah, I guess so. So there we go. That's on this projection. It doesn't make another one on the stack there, so that's good. All that's set up. So okay, I'm going to start rendering this, and if for any reason there's a mistake, I will pause it, re-edit it, put in a proper bake, and then let you know what I did. I do have to figure out how to... Alright, that's what I set it to. I'm going to pause it real quick. We'll be right back. Alright, so I've already set this up. Everything seems okay, and we're just going to go to render real quick. Now I took off light ray tracing, so this might actually have a different effect. Before that was a different texture look to it, but it might be because I did this. Actually, you know what? It's starting to look like it's just flipped upside down. It's weird. But either way, you can see that there's no red because that's what the color of the errors of the scan would be. Alright, so let me double check and make sure that I actually did the normal map. Okay. So, there you have it. It does look like it's just flipped over with the light facing a different way. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create a new material, and before I do that I'm going to do this so that the material underneath is set to a more proper material kind of shading with specular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to bump. First I'm going to jack this up to 100. When you click on this, you don't just go to bitmap, and the reason why is because, well, I'm going to show you. You're meant to do this. Go to normal map. It's going to open up another menu. Then you go into the normal. Then you go to bitmap. So if you actually have a normal, this will make the effect. And then I'll show you how to actually enable it in your viewport so you can actually see the normal. Sometimes you think you're looking at it, but you're not really seeing it with the effect. I believe this is the one. Alright, so we'll go with that. It looks kind of weird with that, but like I said, I already made this texture. Um, this one has like a bunch of ambient occlusion, has a specular one, and I use these. I made them in Crazy Bump right after I made that normal. You can make all the maps in 3ds Max. Now I know most of them can be made the same way the normal can, but I believe the height map, a lot of people do it differently, and I think they use Mental Ray when they do it. So I'm still trying to learn exactly the best ways for each map, but I'm able to make do with different programs and emulate it and edit it as I see fit. So for this one, we're just basically worried about normal maps. And so right now, as you can see, there's that. It may not look right in this viewport, but that's just because that's how that kind of renders. I guess it's sort of a bug in 3ds Max, or an issue that's been around. So for right now, we're going to get rid of the high poly, and we're going to apply this. So I already have this enabled so we can actually see the normal map. Now if I didn't do that, well, this is what it would I think would happen. I might just do it again instead of not taking it off. But anyway, it wouldn't show this. You wouldn't see it at all when I put that on there, because it actually has the bump map underneath the bump map. So if I wanted to diffuse and actually put in a texture that would then take ambient occlusion, or maybe even you have one diffuse texture has the color and all the other ones and ambient occlusion, you know, in it, you can put that in as well. So as you can see, that's basically that, and that came out of the bake that we just did. So I'm going to move the high poly one out of the way really quickly so that you can see, low poly out of the way. Now, because I didn't exactly have the exact same settings as I did before for this one, it doesn't look exactly the same. Like I said, it does have kind of a shiny material to it, but the light looks like it's in a different way. And I know that there was a setting that I accidentally changed last time, so I'm sorry if I missed that. If some of you catch that, feel free to put it in the comment. I just might redo this video and upload it with the proper one. But so you see this actually happening. This is done, you know. And if I were to open my desktop and look at this normal again, you can see it's very, very well done. At least I think it is. It's a perfect normal. So that can be used in programs like Crazy Bump, for instance. I'll show you this really quickly. Now, this works for people that don't know how to do all the other bakes. Just if you can get a normal map like this, you're good to go. So I believe, yep, open normal map file. Soccer ball. I used to play soccer as a kid, by the way, so I figured I'd throw this in there. So this is going to actually start rendering, and I can, as you can see, they now have the different maps taken from the information in the normal. So I could even like sharpen the normal if I wanted to. I can change the normal around if I wanted to, things like that. Intensity, I could drop it. I could make it go all the way up. I could edit it. It's kind of messing with the normal now at this point, but like other things like this, you can change aspects of the different maps so that when you put these together under a texture, it looks proper. Realism to it, things like that, so that's just one of the programs you can use to do this. And that's that. So you see that I took that one thing there and was able to make other maps with it. So that being shown, you know how this was actually fully done, but the normal map was done the same way this one was. But again, like I said, there must have been a setting or light in a certain way that I had this done. It could just be the light tracing. I could have left that on last time, so that might be what it is. You give that a shot, and again, like I showed you before, if you come into rendering, render setup, where is it? There it is. Yeah. you go into render. I think that's no advanced lighting. I'm sorry. Yeah, see, I don't have it on. So, like, if I had it on, maybe it would change that. I'll test it out afterwards, and either way, in the description, it may be updated to let you know, so you don't have to watch a new video. But so I'll put this on here right now, and as you can see, I don't have this enabled to be viewed, and the reason why is because you want to click on the show realistic material in viewport right here under the material editor, and to get to that again, you hold this down and go right here. So I'm gonna enable that. And as you can see, this one looks way better. This is more close, and I even added some kind of specular detail on this, so that if this gets wet in a video game, it's going to show up more on these areas, or it's going to look more realistic. And also with these maps, what you can do in programs like Substance Painter or Quixel, you can take tools in those programs where you can then paint different layers of textures or details of scratches and things like that onto your model in real time. And you can even connect it with 3ds Max or Photoshop at the same time and update it with Unreal 4 and all that. You could do all that stuff. It's come a long way since we've actually, started getting crazy with this stuff. So nowadays you can do all sorts of things. So this material is that, and again, if I take that off, you can clearly see that. I know if I hide one of these, it'll show in the corner here. As you can see, the polys and the verts, frames per second, it's pretty crazy. So this is a low poly, alright, and I'm going to put on edge faces so that you can actually see that this is just a texture on a low poly model. And then when you actually bring that back, okay, these are the polys of this model. Okay, big difference. So if you think about it, that's way better to be using in a game engine, especially when you're trying to optimize and make it run as efficient as possible. There are other programs where you can actually use it to optimize your textures to make it even better if you have issues, but make sure that you know what you're doing before you do it, because if you mess with it, it may mess with everything else and it might make everything look like crap. So another thing I wanted to do, I believe I set this up already, was kind of show you in real time really quickly as these things are turning in an animation I set up. You can see the light as it hits this in real time with realistic shading and everything in the viewport. So let me turn these both on. Now I have these on here, and I'll turn off the edge faces. So the animation's a little messed up. I had a little shorter than I should have, but it's basically just showing you, as you can see, the lighting. I mean, the other material's a little bit more roughed up, but that's what I'm going to start doing with this and making it look more like a roughed up version, while this will pretty much is just normal material, quick, didn't have any edits to it. It was just a gray background, and we threw that on there. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you learn some things. If you're wondering what this is Text Tools. I just started learning about this in the past few days, so I'm going to be using this a lot to help me with my models and pack UVs and everything like that. And then, like I said, that's one of the biggest things you got to worry about when you do this. And if you're a light mapper and you know how to do that, you want to make sure your UVs are packed as tightly as possible, but also utilized the best as possible. So it's the same thing with texturing as well, because the more space you use, the higher the resolution. A lot of people may not realize that does indeed have an effect. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or you would like to learn something, I might be able to help you out. If not, there's other videos online that I know a lot of things that I learned came from that. It was probably about 4 years ago I started doing this, so when I say that you can actually learn how to do this pretty easily, I'm not kidding. You just got to find the right videos. And again, I hope this video helps you out helps you learn a bunch of other stuff. I will make another video to kind of show on this same model how to do the ambient occlusion if I remember how to set it up properly in this. Again, I do believe there's two different ways to do it, but let me see if I can try to do one that I'm more familiar with, and we'll go from there. So alright guys, I'll see you soon.